The Force is light and full of shadows.
Before we dive in, check the link in the description if you want exclusive timelines, members-only videos you won't find on YouTube, all on our Patreon. The room is too small. That is the first thing she understands. Not the year, not the body, not the impossible weight of breath returning to lungs that do not know what they have lost. The room is too small, and it is wrong in the way that only a place you have not thought about in 3 decades can be wrong. Precise in every detail, alien in every proportion. A practice saber on the wall mount, a tactical datapad on the study shelf, half finished, its screen dark. A single window, narrow, angled toward Coruscant's lower sky, where the city burns amber through the glass, in the deep cycle hour before the maintenance workers begin their shifts. The room of a person who has not yet accumulated enough living to fill it. Ahsoka Tano sits up in the dark. She does not scream. The Ahsoka who opens her eyes in this room is 45 years old. Whatever body she is sitting in, and she knows already before she looks at her hands exactly what body this is, the mind behind the eyes has 30 more years of weight in it than the room expects. 45 does not scream when it lands. It breathes. It assesses. It does the thing that only time teaches, which is to take the shock of the impossible and begin, immediately treating it as a problem with a structure and therefore a solution. She breathes in. Her montrals ache. This is the first physical sensation that breaks through the assessment protocol, and it breaks through because it is so specific and so strange. Her montrals are small again, the full, deep acoustic range she had built across decades, the way sound memory accumulates in the cartilage, the way a lifetime of listening layers itself into the very shape of her head, all of it compressed into anatomy that has not earned it yet. She raises one hand to touch the left montral and feels the smooth curve of a 16-year-old's, and something in her chest does a thing she does not have language for. She looks at her hands, smooth, too smooth. The calluses that lived in her right palm, built from years of white lightsaber hilts, from the controls of a starfighter pulled through a purge-era debris field, from 3 days of climbing the raw stone face of a cliff on a moon whose name she had never learned, are gone. The hands of a child. Her hands, both things true at once. She gets up, she crosses to the small mirror above the wash basin. Her face is wrong, not in the way that faces are wrong in grief or sickness, or the morning after a loss that has not fully arrived yet. Wrong in the structural way, the way a door is wrong when it opens the wrong direction. Unlined, unfinished. The marks of Malachor do not exist here, because here is before Malachor, and before Malachor is before almost everything that made her face into the face she had learned to recognize. She touches her cheek with 2 fingers. She stands there for 3 full seconds. Then she moves. The temple is asleep around her. The deep cycle maintenance hour has its own particular quality in the residential wing. Not silence exactly, but the specific quality of a building resting inside its own systems. The low circulation hum of the air processors, the distant cycling of the water reclamation unit 2 corridors west. She knows this sound. She grew up in it. She had thought, in the years after, that she had forgotten it. She had not. She does not need to check the time. She knows what day it is. The bombing is scheduled for the morning shift, when Jacker Bowman arrives at the lower hangar's power generator sector, and the nanodroids that have been building up in his system over recent weeks receive the remote activation signal, the signal that will end him and 5 others and begin the worst sequence of months in her life. Letta Termond has been administering the compound gradually, worked into Jacker's food over time. A slow accumulation of inert biological material that becomes catastrophic the moment it is triggered. The final stage of that process is not yet complete. One last dose remains. One last delivery point that Ahsoka, standing in this room, in this body, in this impossible moment, can still reach. She moves, civilian clothes from the storage shelf, non-Jedi, non-distinctive, the kind of second-hand gear she kept for undercover assignments in her original Padawan years. She dresses quickly and without ceremony. She does not take her training sabers. Too loud, too specific. The weapons she needs tonight are not the ones on the wall. She pauses in front of the door. She runs the compression exercise, the one she had learned in the dark times, during the years of hiding from inquisitors who tracked force signatures the way bloodhounds track scent. Pulling her light down, damping the radiance. It is active work, like holding a sun in cupped hands and willing it not to burn. She can feel the effort of it in her sternum, the specific pressure of a presence larger than the container she is holding it in, and she holds it anyway until she reads, "To any Jedi who might reach out through the Force in passing, like a sleeping Padawan, like background warmth, like nothing of note." She opens the door, she steps into the corridor. The temple at this hour is navigable. The clone guards rotate on the outer rings at 40-minute intervals. She knows the pattern because she studied every security rotation in this temple across 3 different decades. And the knowledge is there in her body like muscle memory, even though the body holding it is only 16. She moves through the colonnade, through the service passage, through the residential auxiliary corridor that connects the Padawan wing to the outer maintenance access. She passes Anakin's quarters. She stops. The door is a standard temple door, Durasteel, flush with the stone, nothing to mark it except the small indicator light showing occupation. He is in there, sleeping, probably, or more likely not sleeping, which is how Anakin Skywalker has always spent the hours before missions, lying awake in the specific way of someone whose mind does not know how to be still. She knows the particular quality of his nighttime restlessness because she lived adjacent to it for years, and she knows what it costs him, and she knows what it is going to cost him later in ways he cannot imagine yet. She stands outside his door for 3 seconds. She does not go in. She cannot go in, not tonight. Not because she does not want to. That wanting is a physical thing. The specific grief of standing on the outside of a door and knowing what is happening on the other side of it, and knowing that knocking on it now would undo everything she needs to build before she can say the things that need to be said. She has been carrying those things through 30 years of loss. She can carry them 3 more days. She turns away from his door. She continues walking. The side gate is unmanned at this hour. The guard post rotates to the main entrance during the deep cycle, a security logic gap she exploited twice in her original Padawan career and is now exploiting for the 3rd time, across 2 lifetimes. The gate opens with her temple access code, which should not work because Padawan Tano is supposed to be asleep in her room. But the temple's administrative systems do not know what the Force knows, and the door opens. The maintenance corridor beyond the gate is amber-lit, low-ceilinged, warm with recycled heat from the city infrastructure below. She steps through. The gate closes behind her. For the first time in what her body insists is 16 years, she is alone. No Anakin above her in the chain of command, no council calculating her usefulness, no Rex watching her flank, no fulcrum network waiting for her reports. Just the corridor and the city smell, coolant and synthetic protein from a vendor 3 levels down, the distant sound of a freight lift cycling, the way the amber work lights make the air itself look like the end of a long shift, and the exact knowledge of where she needs to be and how long she has to get there. She pulls the hood up. She moves into the dark the way the dark moves into the dark, like it had always been hers. Coruscant's lower residential sector does not sleep so much as it exhales. The upper city has its night cycle, the deliberate dimming of boulevard lights, the quieting of transit lanes, the performed stillness of a civilization that has decided sleep is something worth pretending to. Down here, in the maintenance plating and recycled air strata of sectors 18 through 22, the concept does not quite translate. The amber work lights never change color. The freight lifts cycle at the same intervals, at the 3rd hour as at the 13th. The food vendor on the corner of Maintenance Corridor 7 Sigma, synthetic protein wraps, reheated in a unit that has not been cleaned since the end of a war that isn't over yet, is open and has always been open, and will be open when the sun that nobody down here can see rises over a skyline they cannot reach. Ahsoka moves through it with her hood up and her hands in her pockets, and the specific unhurried quality of someone who has done this, exactly this, a different city, different corridors, same logic, more times than she can count. She does not use the Force to navigate. She uses memory. Letta Terman's residential address is filed in her mind with the precision of a tactical coordinate. Building number, floor, corridor designation, the specific sound the lift makes in this block when it is working, which it is not. She takes the maintenance stairs. The 3rd-level landing smells of hydraulic fluid and old ration packaging. The stairwell light on the 2nd level is burned out. She navigates the dark section by the amber bleed from the corridor above, her footsteps adjusted to the particular silence that years of Inquisitor-adjacent survival had made automatic. Slow, heel first. No rhythm a listening ear could time. She rounds the landing to the 3rd level and stops. 2 clone troopers. Corridor sweep, not looking for her. not looking for anything specific. The bored and professional rotation of men who have been doing this for 3 years, and have the specific exhaustion of soldiers who are very good at a job they did not choose. The lead trooper's helmet is turned slightly left, tracking a noise from the ventilation shaft. The second is checking a datapad with the dedication of someone reading maintenance logs they are not interested in. Ahsoka steps back into the ladder alcove. She presses herself against the pipe housing. The compression exercise holds. Her presence, already damped to near nothing, goes quieter still, and she breathes through it without sound and without effort that would register as effort. They pass. The lead trooper coughs. A wet, tired sound, the kind that accumulates in men who breathe recycled air for months on end. The second one says something she doesn't catch, and the first one makes a sound that might be a laugh. Their footsteps recede down the corridor and turn the corner and are gone. She counts to 7. She continues up the stairs. The apartment is on the 4th level, 3rd door from the north stairwell access. She does not need to check the number. She has known this door in the way you know things that broke your life, from the outside in retrospect, with total clarity. She listens first. Through the door, the low hum of a cooling unit running past its maintenance cycle. A muffled rhythm from the back room. Jacker Bowman, sleeping. And underneath both sounds, barely audible, the particular quality of a person who is awake and trying not to be heard thinking. A slight shift of weight, the sound of a container being moved on a kitchen surface. Leia Organa has not gone to bed. Ahsoka knocks. 3 seconds. 4. The weight shift behind the door goes still. The specific stillness of someone who was not expecting a knock and is now deciding whether to pretend they are not home. Then footsteps, cautious, and the door opens on its safety chain. Leia Organa is in her late 30s, with the particular exhaustion of someone who has been awake on a decision for too many consecutive hours. Her eyes are sharp and frightened, in equal measure. She is still dressed. Behind her left shoulder, on the kitchen surface, a sealed container sits beside an open bottle of synthetic protein supplement, the kind that comes pre-mixed, the kind you add things to. This is the last dose, the final addition to a process that has been weeks in the making, and she has not mixed it yet, and that is the only fact that matters tonight. Ahsoka looks at the container for exactly 1 second. Then she looks at Leia. Leia, she says, one word, in a register so calm and so adult that something in Leia's face changes immediately, the way a face changes when the person behind it realizes they are not talking to who they thought they were talking to. The door does not close. She sits at Leia's kitchen table. She asks Leia to sit. She does it the way a person asks when they are not actually asking, when the request is so steady and so certain that declining it would require a specific kind of effort, that Leia Organa, at this hour, after this many hours of sitting with this decision, does not have left in her. Leia sits. Ahsoka folds her hands on the table. She does not look at the container. She looks at Leia, and she speaks plainly and precisely, the biology, the physics, the sequence of events that will occur in Jacker Bowman's body when the nanodroids receive their activation signal in the lower hangar's power generator room. The way such a compound behaves once the full administered quantity reaches its threshold. The way a remote trigger works on material that has been building in a person's system over weeks. He will not survive it. He was never going to survive it. What Leia was told was not what Leia was given. The role she was handed, carrier, intermediary, the person who passes something along and walks away intact, was a story. The reality is a body count, and Jacker Bowman's name is at the top of it. She watches the understanding arrive in Leia's face. It does not look like horror. It looks like the expression of someone who picked up a tool and is only now realizing with complete certainty that the tool is also a weapon. That the hands holding it are not clean, and were not clean the moment they accepted it. And every subsequent hour of telling themselves otherwise was not innocence, but arithmetic. It looks like a woman realizing she has been used as the means to an end, that she was deliberately not shown. Ahsoka does not rush it. She lets it arrive at its own pace. She knows what it costs. Leia speaks, slowly at first, the hesitation of someone checking each word before it leaves, testing the air, and then, with increasing speed, the way water moves when the first crack in a dam becomes the second. She gives everything. The name. Barriss Offee, spoken like a wound, like the name of someone who was a friend before they were a handler. The anti-war network, operating in the underbelly of Coruscant's civilian strata, drawing from genuine grief and genuine anger, and the very real accumulation of people who had lost someone to a war they did not vote for. The nanodroid origin Republic medical supply chain, a manifest discrepancy some months back in a Temple medical dispensary order that no one had yet noticed was missing. The contact locations, the timeline. Throughout all of it, Ahsoka sits still. She is not triumphant, she is not moved, she is building, cataloging each piece of information with the specific, unhurried attention of a commander reading terrain. Not excited by it, not surprised by it, using it. When Leia finishes, the kitchen is quiet, except for the cooling unit and Jacker's breathing from the back room. Steady and slow, and entirely unaware of everything his wife has just said. "You can't stay here," Ahsoka tells her. Not a threat, not a warning delivered to produce fear. A logistical fact, stated clearly. Barriss Offee will come for her when the bombing does not go off. Leia's value as a vector becomes her liability the moment the plan fails, and the plan has already failed. Leia asks where they are going. Ahsoka picks up the sealed container from the kitchen surface and places it in the cargo pouch at her hip without ceremony. "Somewhere dry," she says, "and hidden." The maintenance sublevel takes 12 minutes to reach on foot. Ahsoka has been holding it in memory since she opened her eyes in the wrong room. Identified during a supply run in her original life, the coordinates recalibrated now to this body's more limited geography. It is austere, a dry space behind a decommissioned water reclamation junction, accessed through a panel that requires a maintenance override she applies with 4 seconds of concentrated effort. A crate to sit on, light from an emergency strip, dim and orange. No windows. Leia looks at it and says nothing. Ahsoka seals the panel behind them. She tells Leia simply, in the same register she has used all night, the one that does not permit argument, not because it threatens, but because it is so certain that uncertainty has no foothold, that people will be looking for her, that she should not open the panel for anyone who does not knock in a specific pattern, which Ahsoka demonstrates once, that there is water in the emergency kit behind a second crate and ration bars in the tertiary panel, that this will not be permanent. She does not explain who she is, she does not explain what she knows, or how she knows it, or what it cost her to know it. Leia, sitting on the crate in the orange light, asks, "Are you Jedi?" Ahsoka looks at her for a moment. "Not exactly," she says. "Not tonight." She seals the sublevel door from the outside. She stands in the maintenance corridor with the cargo pouch in her hand, and the nanodroids inert inside it, and 6 people distributed across the Jedi Temple who are going to wake up in a few hours and make their morning rations and argue with. Their friends, and never know that they were supposed to die today. She breathes. The bombing is prevented. Leia is secured. The evidence is in her hands. Barriss Offee is still inside the temple. Before she moves, she takes out a comm unit, a civilian model, unregistered, purchased weeks ago in her original life, and remembered now with the precision of someone who never stopped running contingencies. She contacts a liaison she knows from the Republic's civilian judicial oversight structure, a clerk in the Bureau's public intake division, whose name she has kept in memory because she once spent 2 months learning every procedural channel the Republic's legal apparatus contained, looking for the cracks in the system that put her in a detention cell. She reaches a night shift intake line. She provides a case summary, her name, the recorded testimony she captured during the conversation with Leia, and the location for physical evidence pickup in the morning, the temple antechamber, where she will deliver it personally. The clerk assigns a case number. The testimony is entered into record. It is not elegant. It will require follow-through in the morning, but the filing exists now, outside the temple's walls, in a system that Tarkin cannot retroactively reshape. The record is the architecture. Everything else is construction. Ahsoka pockets the comm unit and begins the walk back. The hardest part of knowing the future was not using it to win. It was using it carefully enough to survive the winning. The temple wakes at its normal hour. Sunlight filtered through Coruscant's perpetual upper atmosphere haze, arriving soft and diffuse and slightly gray at the high windows, moves across the colonnaded walkways in the way it always does, the way it has done for 10,000 years, indifferent to everything happening beneath it. Younglings move toward their morning forms practice in the east courtyard, their footsteps small and overlapping. A pair of knights walk the outer colonnade in low conversation. From the commissary, 2 levels down, comes the smell of breakfast rations, the specific institutional smell of a kitchen feeding 300 people the same thing. warm, and faintly synthetic, and oddly comforting in the way that only smells from childhood are comforting. Nothing is on fire. This is the thing the narration cannot say plainly enough. Nothing is on fire. The hangar is intact. The power generator room in the lower wing is running its normal diagnostic cycle. 6 people who do not know they were supposed to die today are eating breakfast. The calm is louder than the explosion would have been. In the corridor outside the temple medical wing, Barriss Offee stands with her back straight and her hands pressed flat against the stone wall and checks the time. She checks it again. Her hands do not shake. She will not let them shake. She has made decisions that required certainty, and certainty does not tremble while it waits for confirmation. But behind her eyes, very quietly, a calculation is beginning that she does not want to make. The morning shift has started. The hangar is operational. There has been no alert, no evacuation, no sound of emergency response moving through the temple's lower corridors. Something went wrong. She does not know what. She does not know how. But whoever stopped it, and someone stopped it because these things do not fail on their own, there is no mechanical explanation for a remote-triggered system simply declining to trigger. That person knows what she was going to do. She removes her hands from the wall. She smooths her robe. She begins walking. Her face gives nothing. Ahsoka re-enters the temple at dawn through the same side gate she left. She changes back into her Padawan tunic in the auxiliary corridor, rolling the civilian clothes into the bottom of her storage shelf with the economy of someone who has changed identities enough times that the physical ritual of it has become purely mechanical. She clips her training sabers to her belt. She takes 3 minutes in front of the mirror, not from vanity, but from operational necessity, reading her own face the way she would read a report, checking for anything that doesn't belong, adjusting the set of her shoulders, finding the specific quality of presence that reads as 16-year-old Ahsoka rather than whatever she actually is. She adjusts the force mask to something lighter, not invisible. Invisible would be its own anomaly. A Padawan with no presence at all is a Padawan drawing attention. She settles for young feeling, plausibly normal, the equivalent of a very good disguise worn by someone who has worn many disguises. She goes to morning practice. The east courtyard is already half populated when she arrives. Padawans of various ages running forms in the early light, Form-I foundations from the younglings near the south wall, more advanced sequences from the older students toward the center, the sound of training sabers cycling, the occasional grunt of physical exertion, the specific rhythm of 12 different people all moving in slightly different tempos. Ahsoka finds a clear space near the east wall and begins her warm-up sequence. She runs Form 5. This is the first mistake she almost makes. Her body moves into the sequence with 45 years of accumulated muscle memory, and the forms that emerge are not wrong, exactly, not visibly wrong to anyone watching with ordinary attention. But 3 moves into the second combination, she executes a transition she invented, a variation on the Ataru spinning assault that she developed during the early Imperial years when she was fighting in confined spaces against opponents who expected standard Jedi footwork. A transition that does not exist yet. That Padawan Tano, at 16, has no conceivable way of knowing. She catches it, she pulls back, she redials, consciously, deliberately choosing imperfect where she would be perfect, introducing the small hesitations and the slightly overextended reach that belong to a student still learning the sequence's geometry. It costs her something specific, not pride, something more functional than pride, the feeling of deliberately blunting a blade you have spent years sharpening, knowing the blade will survive it but feeling the wrongness of the action anyway. She continues the form, imperfect, plausible. She feels him before she hears him. Not through the training bond. She is not reaching for that, not yet, not until she has to. Just through the ordinary awareness of someone whose peripheral senses were trained by years of combat and refined by years of hiding. The particular displacement of air that Anakin Skywalker makes when he enters a space and has not yet decided whether to announce himself. The quality of attention that arrives slightly ahead of the person. He leans against the courtyard wall, 12 meters to her left. He watches her run the form. He says nothing for 90 seconds. She counts them. "You're up early," he says finally. The tone is casual. The specific casualness of someone who is not actually being casual, who is using casual as a container for something that has no other container available yet. I figured after yesterday's simulation debrief, You'd sleep until the commissary ran out of everything worth eating. The joke has a shape she recognizes precisely, self-deprecating at the surface, affectionate underneath, designed to produce a specific response: the eye roll, the half-smile, the return volley that is 3 degrees more cutting than his opening, and makes him grin because she always lands it better than he does. She gives it the right beat of silence. She gives it the right tone. "The simulation debrief was fine," she says. "You're just sensitive about the part where I outscored you. It is correct. It is close enough, but the timing is off by exactly the margin of someone who had to remember to be spontaneous, who reached for the response rather than producing it, who knew what the music was supposed to sound like, and played it from notation rather than by ear." He notices, she sees it, not in any obvious shift of expression, but in the slight quality change of his attention, of focusing, the way a scanner moves from passive to active. He pushes off the wall and walks toward her. He stops a meter away. He asks, in a different tone entirely, quieter, without the casualness, "How'd you sleep?" "Fine," she says. In Ahsoka Tano's vocabulary, across every year he has known her, fine has always arrived with a specific nonverbal accompaniment. The slight eye roll that means, "stop asking," or the chin lift that means, "better than you," or occasionally, the genuine version, the small true version, where the word lands flat and means exactly what it says. He has cataloged all of them. He has been cataloging them without knowing he was cataloging them, since the day she arrived on his ship, and told him he was a fool in a tone that implied she expected better. There is no eye roll, there is no chin lift. She meets his gaze directly, and fine lands in the space between them, and means something he does not have a word for yet. He stops walking. He reaches through the training bond gently, the way masters do when they want to take a reading, the force equivalent of a hand placed briefly on a shoulder to check temperature. It is not invasive, it is habitual. He has done it 1,000 times. What he finds is not Ahsoka, not the Ahsoka he has always found there. Quick, bright, slightly too warm, the force presence of someone always moving even when standing still, always 3 steps ahead of their own stillness. What he finds is something that has the same shape, the same essential signature, but different in the way that a river is different from the canyon it carved. The canyon is the proof of the water, and the water is recognizably the same water, but the canyon has been there longer, and knows things the river does not. He withdraws from the bond. His hand, at his side, closes slowly into a fist. He stands in the courtyard in the morning light and feels, not grief, because grief requires knowing what has been lost, and he does not know yet, just the sensation of a door he has always found open, leading now to a room that is the same room in a completely different room, same wall, different world, and the change happened without him, and he was not consulted, and he does not know when. Across the courtyard, near the southern practice stations, Barriss Offee watches them, not with overt suspicion. Her expression is neutral, the expression of a scholar passing through a space that happens to contain other people. But Ahsoka, without looking directly at her, reads the quality of that attention the way a navigator reads a current, by what it does to the water around it. Barriss is measuring. She is trying to determine whether the person she is looking at is the person who stopped her plan, and if so, how much that person knows, and what that person intends to do with it. Ahsoka continues her conversation with Anakin. She does not look at Barriss. She is aware of her the way she is aware of weather. Anakin's parting line arrives without preamble. He has been watching her for another 20 seconds after the bond reading, long enough that the silence between them has become its own kind of statement, and then he says it. Not an accusation, not a question, the flat, careful delivery of a man placing a fact down in front of someone and waiting to see what they do with it. You're different. He does not wait for an answer. He knows her well enough to know that if she had an answer ready, she would have already given it. He turns and walks back toward the main colonnade, his hands loose at his sides, and he does not look back. Ahsoka watches him go. She breathes. She does not explain. She cannot explain. Not yet. Not until the proof is in hand and the architecture is in place, and the explanation becomes something that requires no defense. 3 days, maybe 4. She can hold this for 4 days. Across the courtyard, Barriss Offee has stopped watching her. That is worse. The archives at mid-morning have the quality of held breath, not quiet. The temple archives are never truly quiet. There is always the ambient system hum of 10,000 holocrons maintaining their charge, the soft cycling of the climate control units that keep the oldest texts at preservation temperature, the occasional footstep of a scholar moving between stacks with the particular focused tread of someone who has forgotten the physical world exists. But underneath all of it, a quality of suspension, as though the room itself is waiting for something to be decided. Ahsoka chooses a reading station in the deep archive, third row from the north wall, second terminal from the left, a position that offers sightlines to both entry corridors without requiring her to face either of them directly. She sets down a datapad. She opens it to a campaign record from the Outer Rim, the Siege of Saleucami, the after-action report filed by the commanding Jedi General, the section on civilian infrastructure damage rendered in the flat, administrative language that military reports use when they are describing things that administrative language was specifically developed to make easier to describe. She reads, she waits. Barriss arrives 11 minutes later. Ahsoka does not look up. She tracks the entry through peripheral vision and the soft displacement of air that precedes a person who moves with healer's training, economical, weight-centered, accustomed to not disturbing the spaces they pass through. Barriss selects a station 2 terminals down, on the same row. She opens her own datapad. She does not look at Ahsoka. Neither of them speaks. The climate control cycles, a scholar 3 rows back turns a page. Ahsoka reads her campaign report. She gives it 40 seconds. Interesting framing, she says. Conversational, the register of someone reading aloud to themselves, not quite directing the observation at anyone in particular. The word acceptable. It does a lot of work in these reports. She does not look up from the datapad. She turns to the next section. Casualty figures, broken into subcategories. The civilian column third from the left. Acceptable strategic losses, she continues, as though the deciding happened somewhere outside the person writing the sentence, as though acceptable is a property the losses have, rather than a judgment someone made about them. Silence from Barriss's terminal. Ahsoka turns another page. She lets 30 seconds pass. She keeps her voice at the same register, mild, slightly abstracted, the tone of someone following a thought, rather than delivering one. I was reading about Republic applied weapons development recently, she says. There's a nanotechnology division operating out of the medical supply chain. Interesting compound they've been working on. Very small. Extremely precise delivery mechanism. She pauses, as though considering a technical detail. There was a manifest discrepancy in one of the Temple medical dispensary orders, apparently, some months back. Someone in supply chain flagged it, small enough that it hadn't moved up the reporting structure yet. The air at Barriss's terminal changes. Not movement, Barriss does not move. But the quality of her stillness shifts, the way the quality of water shifts when something beneath the surface changes direction. Ahsoka registers it in her peripheral vision. The slight tightening around the eyes, there and gone in under a second, controlled by someone who has practiced controlling it. Ahsoka turns another page. She does not look at her. I also read something once, she says, about grief. About the way grief, when it runs long enough and deep enough, can become indistinguishable from the thing that caused it. The person carrying it starts to take on the shape of their wound. She closes the campaign report. She opens the next file in her queue, unhurried. Philosophically interesting problem. Whether there's a point at which a response to suffering becomes a form of suffering, and who gets to decide where that point is. Barriss speaks. She does it carefully. The voice of someone who has decided that pretending not to understand is a less tenable position than engaging on controlled ground. Her tone is academic, measured. The voice she uses when she is presenting an argument she has tested many times in private and believes to be structurally sound. Every institution that commits violence, Barriss says, develops a vocabulary for making that violence invisible. The reports you're reading are part of that vocabulary. The Jedi developed ours over 3 years of calling it strategy. A pause. When an institution becomes the mechanism of harm, those inside it face a binary. Complicity or resistance. The comfortable always choose complicity and call it pragmatism. Ahsoka closes her datapad. She looks at Barriss directly for the first time. The costs, she says, are always paid by someone who didn't choose the cause. She lets that land. She watches it land. The slight shift in Barriss's jaw, the recalibration happening behind her eyes. That's not resistance, Ahsoka continues. That's conscription. The only difference between what you're describing and what you're condemning is the size of the administrative vocabulary being used to justify it. Barris's composure holds. It holds the way something holds when it is being held from the inside by effort, rather than by structure. She says, some costs are necessary. The comfortable position is to decide you are not the one who has to pay them. The comfortable position, Ahsoka says, is deciding that other people are the ones who will. She rises. She picks up her datapad. She does not perform the action, does not make it pointed or theatrical, does not let it announce itself as a closing move. She simply stands, the way a person stands when they have finished what they came to do. Whatever you're planning, she says, and her voice is quiet now, the specific quietness of something that has been true for a long time and is only now being said aloud. You should understand that you're not the only one in this temple who sees the rot. She tucks the datapad under her arm. The difference is that some of us have lived long enough to know that the remedy and the disease look identical at the beginning, before you can tell them apart. Before you've seen what the remedy becomes when the people administering it stop questioning themselves. She does not wait for a response. She turns and walks toward the archive corridor. She does not look back. Barris sits alone at the reading terminal for a long moment after the footsteps fade. The holocrons hum around her, the climate control cycles. Somewhere in the deep stacks, the scholar turns another page. Ahsoka, moving through the archive corridor, keeps her awareness extended. Not intrusively, just the passive read of someone tracking atmosphere. And through it, at the distance of 2 rows and 1 corridor turn, she feels the shift. Not dramatic, not the sharp cold of a decision to flee or confess or collapse. Something more deliberate than any of those. A reordering, the specific quality of a mind that has just upgraded its threat assessment and is now building around the new information rather than against it. Barris is not going to stop. She is going to change her approach, and the new approach will have Ahsoka Tano at its center, because Ahsoka Tano has just demonstrated, with considerable precision, that she knows too much to be allowed to keep knowing it. Ahsoka notes this without breaking stride. She noted it the moment she sat down at the terminal. She has been planning around it since she woke up in a room that was too small, with hands that were too smooth and understood, with the clarity that only lived consequence produces, that Barriss Offee was always going to try to kill her. She had known this since she woke up. The question was never whether, it was where. She already knows the answer to that too. Level 1313 is not a place. It is a condition. The industrial underbelly of Coruscant at this depth has long since stopped pretending to be part of the city above it. The infrastructure here is purely functional. Massive coolant pipes running floor to ceiling, exhaust vents cycling superheated air from the smelting operations 3 levels deeper, freight platforms suspended over shafts that drop another 800 meters into the planet's industrial core. The lighting is operational rather than atmospheric. Harsh white work lamps bolted to structural supports at irregular intervals, leaving long channels of deep shadow between them. The smell is metal and heat, and the particular chemical signature of industrial lubricants burning off at high temperature. No civilians at this hour. No clone patrols. The security rotation for level 13 runs on a 40-minute cycle, with a 12-minute gap between the north and south sweeps. A gap she has known since a mission in her original Padawan year that required her to move a witness through this sector without documentation. The gap is still 12 minutes. Some things do not change. She chose this ground. That is the first fact. Every engagement happens on terrain, and terrain is always the first weapon available, and she selected level 1313 the way a commander selects a defensive position. Sightlines, acoustics, structural features that favor the party who arrived first, and knows the geometry. The 3-way intersection of maintenance corridors at the sector's central freight platform offers exactly what she needs. Multiple approach angles she can monitor, a vertical drop to a secondary level she can use if the engagement requires it, and the particular acoustic quality of a space where sound travels in straight lines rather than scattering. She will hear Barriss coming before Barriss reaches visual range. She arrived 40 minutes early. She used the time to walk the terrain twice, then station herself on the freight platform with her back to the most obvious approach corridor and her awareness extended in every direction at the level of passive ambient read, not active force search, which Barriss would feel, but the background hum of someone who has spent decades learning the difference between the two. She waits. The question of Ventress's sabers requires no guesswork. Ahsoka had cataloged this detail in her original life's aftermath. During the months of analysis that followed her acquittal, the forensic reconstruction of every choice Barriss made and why. The Temple's confiscated weapons archive holds Asajj Ventress's curved hilt lightsabers, logged after a recent engagement, sealed in the evidence vault under standard intake protocol. They are the obvious choice for a Jedi who needs a weapon that cannot be traced to Temple inventory, and who understands that curved hilts compensate for what a healer's combat training lacks in brute leverage. Barriss's form is elegant. Economy of motion, precise targeting, the footwork of someone trained to operate in medical environments where collateral damage is unacceptable. Against a standard opponent, she is genuinely dangerous. Against someone operating at the skill level Padawan Tano is supposed to have, she is more than sufficient. Ahsoka runs the calculation without sentiment. Barriss will be dangerous to a 16-year-old. She is not dangerous to a 45-year-old Togruta who spent the dark times developing a variant of Form V, specifically adapted for fighting opponents who are faster and better armed than she is. She files the calculation. She does not revisit it. She turns her back to the main approach corridor. She waits. Barriss comes through the correct corridor. She times the patrol gap precisely. Ahsoka notes this with something that is not quite appreciation and not quite its opposite. A maintenance cloak, stolen or borrowed, hood up. She moves well. She moves like someone who has thought carefully about how to move in a space like this, who understands that the work lamp intervals create predictable shadow patterns, and has used them deliberately. She reaches the freight platform's edge without making a sound that the ambient noise of the sector doesn't cover. She ignites both sabers at the platform's upper edge. The snap hiss of Ventress's curved hilts is distinct, a slightly higher pitch than standard construction, the resonance of crystals that have been pushed hard across many engagements and carry that history in their frequency. The red light floods the platform in two overlapping pools, and Barriss's voice arrives with it, controlled, carrying the specific quality of someone delivering a line they have rehearsed, because the alternative is feeling what they are actually doing. You shouldn't have gotten involved in something you don't understand. Ashoka's answer comes without her turning. I understand it better than you. She steps left. The strike that would have opened her right shoulder from behind passes through empty air. The blade carves a line through the space her body occupied a quarter second ago, close enough that the heat of it registers on the back of her neck. She has still not drawn her sabers. She has still not turned. Barriss attacks. The opening combination is fast. The curved hilt sequence that was Ventress's signature, the two-blade orbiting pattern that generates approach angles from directions a single-blade guard cannot cover simultaneously. It is genuinely difficult to defend against without either significant footwork or a two-blade response of equal speed. Ahsoka moves, not defensively, not the reactive scramble of someone caught off guard. She moves the way water moves around a stone, not because the stone forces it, but because the water already knew the stone was there and had already chosen its path before it arrived. She reads Barriss's tells in the first two strikes. The slight drop of the left shoulder telegraphing the overhead cut, the fractional overextension before the advancing push, the weight transfer pattern of a healer's footwork that was trained for precision in confined spaces and does not adjust fluidly when the confined space is removed. She does not dodge randomly, she preempts. A strike aimed at her left side arrives to find her already past it, her body rotated the precise amount required to let the blade pass within centimeters without requiring her to break her walking pace. A force-augmented lunge covers the distance between them in under a second. She is already sideways to it when Barriss's feet leave the ground. She has still not drawn her sabers. A cut aimed at her midsection cleaves through a support cable instead. Sparks cascade across the platform in a wide arc. Ahsoka walks through the shower without breaking stride. And the specific quality of that? The complete absence of flinch. The way the sparks simply fall around her like rain around someone who has decided not to get wet, registers in Barriss's movement pattern as the first hairline crack in her certainty. A force push arrives with real power behind it. Barriss is not weak in the force, whatever her other limitations, and this push is designed to clear the platform edge and solve the problem through momentum rather than precision. Ahsoka takes it. She lets it move her, not because she cannot resist it, but because the platform edge is 8 feet above a secondary level she has already identified as tactically superior, and being pushed off it is faster than climbing down. She drops into the controlled fall, absorbs the landing across both feet and one hand, and stands. She is unhurried, below the platform now. Barriss at the upper edge, sabers lit, breathing harder than the exchange justifies, not from physical exertion, but from the specific effort of recalibrating in real time against something that is not responding the way it should respond. The pause stretches. Barriss looks down at her. The red light catches the edges of her expression. She says it with genuine effort at steadiness, and the effort is visible, and the visibility is its own answer. What are you? Ahsoka looks up at her. The silence holds for exactly 3 seconds, long enough that the question has nowhere to go except deeper. Then Ahsoka ignites her sabers, 2 blue-green blades, completely still in her grip. The light they throw is steady and clean and does not flicker. And that stillness, in a space full of red light and heat and the smell of cut metal, is the most unsettling thing Barriss Offee has seen in 3 years of war. The trap had been built for a Padawan. It had eaten itself. 2 blue-green sabers, completely still. Not the stillness of someone bracing. Not the locked joint, held breath stillness of a fighter setting their guard before an exchange they are not sure they will survive. The stillness of something that has already decided. The blades hold their position in her grip the way a compass holds north. Not because they are being forced to, but because there is simply nowhere else for them to be. Barriss descends from the upper platform. She does not leap. She uses the access ladder on the platform's east edge, which is the tactically correct choice, which tells Ahsoka that whatever Barriss's certainty has lost in the last 3 minutes, her thinking has not. She reaches the lower level and closes the distance to 8 meters and stops. The red light from Ventress's curved hilts and the blue-green from Ahsoka's training crystals occupy the same space and produce a color that has no name. The steam vents cycle somewhere in the sector's lower infrastructure. The freight platform hums beneath their feet with the low vibration of a system that does not care what is happening on its surface. Barriss attacks. Her opening sequence is her fastest. The 2-blade orbiting combination that generated its approach angles effectively in the upper platform exchange. Adapted now for close-range application, with the curved hilts rotating in shorter arcs to account for the reduced distance. It is technically sophisticated. Against any opponent she has faced in 3 years of war, it would be sufficient. Ahsoka parries once, twice, 3 times. Blade geometry only. No footwork yet. Each parry uses the minimum deflection required, not the full redirecting sweeps of a fighter buying time, but the precise, minimal contact of someone who knows exactly where each strike is going before it arrives and needs only to place her blade at the correct angle, in the correct location, at the correct moment. The curved hilts ring against her guard, with the sound of a clock being measured against a second clock that runs slower and never misses. She is reading. She gives it 6 seconds. Then she moves. 1 step forward, inside Barriss's guard, inside the radius where the curved hilt advantage, the arcing reach, the orbiting approach angles, collapses into liability. The advantage of Ventress's design is distance. Remove the distance and the arc becomes a problem. The blade needs room to complete its rotation. And inside the guard there is no room. And the fighter, whose style was built around the arc, now has 2 hilts that are working against her geometry instead of for it. Barriss recognizes it. A half-second too late, her weight is already committed to the forward combination, and the recognition arrives at the same moment as Ahsoka's counter-pressure. A single redirecting parry that catches both blades simultaneously at the hilt junction of their rotation applies lateral force in the specific direction that the curved design cannot resist cleanly, and sends Barriss's guard wide. She steps back hard to recover. She does not get the step. Ahsoka follows, not aggressively, without anger, without acceleration, just the steady forward pressure of someone walking through a door they know is open. Barriss's backstep becomes a retreat, and the retreat has a direction now, and the direction was chosen by Ahsoka before the exchange began. The middle phase of the duel is not spectacular. This is intentional. There is no clash of equal forces meeting at full power, no exchange of overwhelming strikes that light the sector with impact flash. What there is, instead, is the systematic removal of options. Ahsoka fights the way a surgeon operates. Not more force than necessary, not less. The specific amount required for the specific outcome desired, applied at the specific location where it will produce the specific effect. Barriss attempts a force push mid-combination, a real one, committed, the kind that moves freight containers when it connects cleanly. Ahsoka lets it move her 2 feet back. She absorbs the momentum across her whole body rather than her planted feet, which means she is already in motion when the push completes. And the motion carries her directly into her response to the follow-up attack that Barriss has already launched, because Barriss is good enough to follow a force push immediately. The response is waiting for the follow-up when the follow-up arrives. Barriss resets. She tries the environment. A steam vent 3 meters to Ahsoka's left begins its cycle. Superheated vapor, enough to obstruct vision and disrupt force red simultaneously if the timing is right. Barriss times it correctly. She drives forward behind the cover of the steam. Ashoka's left hand makes a gesture so small it looks like a finger adjusting its grip on the saber hilt. The vent's cycle valve, accessible through a micro-force touch on the pressure regulator mounted to the pipe's exterior, closes 1 second early. The steam disperses. Barriss emerges from the cover she was counting on to find clear air, and Ahsoka's blade already positioned for the parry she was planning to land through the obstruction. Barriss pulls back. She is breathing harder now. She talks. This is the tell Ahsoka was waiting for, the moment when a fighter who is losing on the physical plane attempts to open a second front. The ideology arrives mid-combination, delivered in Barriss's measured academic register even through the exertion. The Jedi's complicity, the acceptable losses, the institution that has forfeited its right to the loyalty it demands. Ahsoka answers in the middle of a parry sequence. She does not break rhythm. She does not raise her voice. "You're right about the wound," she says, deflecting the left blade. "You're wrong about the cure, right blade. A diagnosis delivered through a body count is still a body count. Redirect, step, close. The argument doesn't survive the method." Barriss's next combination has a fraction less conviction in it than the one before. The fraction is small. It is enough. The disarm is not dramatic. It is final. Ahsoka intercepts the right-hand blade mid-rotation, not blocking it, intercepting it, making contact at the specific point in the curved hilt's arc where the design's rotational momentum works against itself. She applies lateral redirection. The right blade's momentum transfers against the left, and the geometry of their crossing creates a brief mechanical trap at the hilt junction, and into that trap she applies a precise leveraging force. Not strength. Leverage. The distinction matters. And both sabers leave Barriss's grip in the span of a single breath. They clatter across the industrial grating. Red light extinguished. The sector returns to its work lamp, white and shadow. Ahsoka does not follow up with aggression. She does not need to. She extends her left hand and applies a force press to Barriss's shoulders, focused, irresistible, not painful, not punishing. Simply the specific amount of downward pressure that a body cannot remain upright against without active force resistance that Barriss in this moment does not have the reserve to mount. Barriss goes to her knees on the grating. The two red sabers lie 10 feet away. The steam vents cycle. Ahsoka stands over her and feels the specific weight of what this is. Not triumph. There is no architecture for triumph here, no clean surface on which it could rest. She has just defeated someone who is going to burn the institution she once loved for reasons she once understood, using a plan she prevented by knowing in her body exactly how it would fail, and there is something in that which is not justice, and not tragedy, and not quite either, one's opposite. She looks at Barriss on her knees. The younger Barriss, who has not yet confessed, not yet been exposed in a courtroom with the galaxy watching, not yet had to carry the specific weight of having been right about the diagnosis and catastrophically wrong about the cure. The one who still has a door in front of her that has not yet closed. The specific weight of it given physical texture by the place in Ahsoka's chest where things settle when they are true and heavy simultaneously. The feeling of standing at a door that can still close differently, not yet slammed, not yet locked, the hinge still moving. Barriss looks up at her from the grating. She is not broken. Her eyes are clear and present in a way they have not been during the entire exchange. Stripped of the plan, stripped of the weapon, left with only the argument and the person she built it for herself. And both of them here on this platform in this light. And neither of them dead. She says, "You fight like someone who has already lost everything." Ahsoka looks down at her. The work lamps cast no flattering light. The sector hums around them with complete indifference. The pause is long enough to be a statement of its own. Then, "I have, and I'm still here." Her voice carries no performance, no weight added to make the words land. They land because they are true, and true things do not require assistance. That's the part you need to hear. They sit on the industrial platform. Ahsoka cross-legged on the grating, her sabers powered down and clipped at her hip. Barriss against the coolant pipe that runs the platform's north edge, her back against the metal, her legs drawn up in front of her. The steam vents have cycled down to their resting interval. Somewhere in the sector's maintenance shafts, the distant sound of a freight lift carries through the dark, rising, then gone. Neither of them moves to retrieve the red sabers lying 10 feet away. Neither of them is ready for this to end. The work lamps throw their indifferent white light. The shadows between them stay exactly where they are. Barriss speaks first. She does it without preamble, without the philosophical framing she used in the archives. That register is gone, stripped by the exchange on the platform, and what remains underneath it is something plainer and more difficult. The flat statement of someone who arrived at a position through a long process and is no longer interested in performing the arrival. The Jedi are the architecture of this war, she says. Palpatine cannot prosecute this conflict at this scale without the Order's participation. We provide the command structure, the legitimacy, the public face of the Republic's military authority. We are not the victims of a political crisis. We are its load-bearing wall. She is not asking Ahsoka to agree. She is stating a position the way someone states a position they have tested in private so many times that the testing is finished. Ahsoka says, "You're right. It lands the way Ahsoka intended it to land." Barriss expected refusal. The defensive posture of an institution protecting itself. The Council's language of necessity and wartime exceptionalism that she has been arguing against in her own mind for 2 years. She expected to have to fight for the premise. She does not have to fight for the premise. Ahsoka continues. The Jedi Council voted to enter the war without interrogating whether that entry would corrupt the Order's foundational relationship to the Force. They accepted military rank, general, commander, the hierarchy of command, without asking what military hierarchy does to an organization that derives its authority from something that has nothing to do with rank. They prosecuted a chancellor's war while telling themselves it was a republic's war, and the distinction mattered and they chose not to examine it. Barriss is right about every piece of the diagnosis. Every piece. She lets that sit. Then, a healer who identifies a cancer and then poisons the water supply to stop it has not cured anything. She has made the cancer contagious. Barriss's response is immediate, and it is the sharpest thing she has said since they sat down. The argument she has been saving, the one she believes is unanswerable. The Jedi have been poisoning the water for 3 years and calling it strategy, acceptable losses, collateral damage. Why is one bombing different? Ahsoka does not look away from her. Because you know, she says. You looked at what you were doing and you saw it clearly, and you chose it. The Jedi generals who authorized those strategic decisions were operating inside a system that made the cost invisible. Bureaucratic language, command distance, the specific moral insulation that institutional hierarchy provides. That's wrong. That's a corruption worth naming. She pauses. But you made a clear-eyed decision to administer a biological weapon to an innocent man over weeks through a wife who believed she was doing something that would leave him alive. There is a difference between an institution that has gone blind and a person who can see and chooses this anyway. The person who can see is more responsible, not less. The freight lift in the maintenance shaft rises again, distant, and is gone. Barriss is quiet for a moment. Not the quiet of someone preparing a counter, the quiet of someone absorbing an impact they were not fully braced for. Ahsoka does not give her long. You used "let determined," she says. She believed she was participating in resistance. She believed Jakar would survive, that he would walk out of that hangar and come home to her. You told her that because you needed her to agree, and you knew she would not agree to the truth. She keeps her voice level. Not cold, level, the way a measuring instrument is level. Every authoritarian movement that has ever described itself as liberation has required its foot soldiers to not fully know what they are doing. The ones at the top always know. The ones in the middle are managed. You were the one at the top, Barriss. You managed Letta the same way Palpatine manages the Senate. The structure is identical. The scale is different. This one arrives differently. She sees it in Barriss's shoulders. The slight drop, the loosening of the deliberate stillness she has been maintaining since she went to her knees. Not defeat. Something more like arrival. The expression of someone who has been carrying an argument for 2 years and is only now in this light, on this platform, being made to hold it next to its reflection. I'm not her, Barriss says. The words come out with less certainty than she intends. Not yet, Ahsoka says. That's why we're talking. The silence that follows is different from the silences before it, less adversarial. The quality of two people sitting with something that is true and heavy and requires a moment before the next thing can be said. Ashoka says, "There was another way." Barriss looks at her. "Not a comfortable one," Ahsoka continues. "Not a fast one. Not one with visible impact in the short term or the satisfaction of having done something that felt proportional to the scale of what you were angry about." She keeps her eyes on Barriss's face, leaving, refusing complicity without replacing it with its own violence, living in the space between the Order's certainty and the galaxy's suffering without filling that space with a body count. It is slow. It is painful. It produces no evidence of itself that you can point to and say, "Here, I did this, I changed this, I matter in this." Barriss says, "You left. You're describing yourself." "Yes." And it didn't stop anything. Her voice is not cruel. It is the voice of someone following the logic. The war continued. The Order continued. You walked away and the machine kept running. "Yes," Ahsoka says again. "I won't lie to you about that. I left and the end came anyway." She does not look away, but I carried nothing that belonged to the darkness when it came. And when the dark came for me, and it came, Barriss, harder than you can currently imagine, it found something that wouldn't break. Not because I was stronger than it, because I hadn't given it anything to use. The freight lift again. Closer this time, or the sector's acoustics shifting with the temperature differential as the vents prepare for their next cycle, the sound of machinery that has no opinion about any of this. Barriss says, "You left and it didn't save anyone." "No," Ahsoka says. "Not then." A pause. Short. One gear. "But I'm here now." The words land in the particular way that simple, true things land, when they are delivered without ornamentation into a space that has been prepared for them by everything that came before. Not dramatically, just completely. Barriss looks at her for a long moment. The philosophical architecture she entered this platform with, the structure she built over 2 years of accumulated grief and genuine moral clarity, and the specific wrong turn that genuine moral clarity can make when it stops questioning itself, is not intact. It has not been demolished by argument. It has been made to stand next to its own reflection for the first time, and the reflection is wearing her face, and she does not entirely recognize herself in it. She does not confess. She is not ready to confess. The confession requires something more than this, requires sitting with what she has seen on this platform long enough for it to become a decision rather than a reaction. But the armor is gone. What remains underneath it is something younger and more frightened and more honest than anything she has shown in this conversation. And Ahsoka can feel it in the Force, the way you feel a change in pressure before weather arrives. Ahsoka stands. She tells Barriss she has 2 options. Come forward, with her, with the evidence already secured, with a confession that shapes its own narrative rather than having its narrative shaped by others. Or don't, in which case, Ahsoka brings what she has to the council without her, and Barriss faces conviction on testimony and physical evidence alone, without the credibility and the context that her own account would provide. She does not threaten her. She does not modulate her voice for effect. She states it the way weather is stated. Here is what is coming. Here are its properties. Here is what you might want to consider before it arrives. Barriss is quiet for a long time after that. Long enough that the freight lift cycles again somewhere deep in the maintenance shafts, and the steam vents complete their resting interval and begin their rise toward the next pulse of superheated vapor. Long enough that the shadows in the sector shift fractionally with the change in ambient temperature, the work lamps holding their indifferent white through all of it. She says, "What happens to Leia?" It is not the question Ahsoka expected. It is, she realizes on reflection, the most honest question Barriss has asked all night. Not about her own fate, not about the confession's strategic value, but about the person she used and lied to and has not stopped thinking about. She's in a safe location, Ahsoka says. Her testimony is already filed with the Republic's Judicial Bureau under Witness Protection Protocol. She won't be prosecuted. She was deceived. Barriss absorbs this. Something in her shoulders does a complicated thing. The specific movement of a person who has been carrying a weight they were pretending wasn't there and has just been given permission to set it down, but cannot quite make themselves do it yet. I told myself she believed in the cause, Barriss says, that the deception was necessary because the truth was something she wasn't ready to choose freely. You told yourself, Ahsoka says, what you needed to hear in order to proceed. Barriss does not deny it. She looks at her own hands on the grating in front of her. Healer's hands, trained for precision and care, and what they have been reaching for instead. And she looks at them for a long time without speaking. When she speaks again, it is in a different register entirely. Not the philosopher, not the strategist, something stripped of all framing, down to the thing underneath. I was so certain, she says. I spent 2 years being certain. It felt like clarity. It felt like being the only person in a room full of sleeping people who could actually see the fire. Certainty is the part to be most afraid of, Ahsoka says. She sits back down, not standing over her anymore, cross-legged again on the grating, level. Not doubt, not fear, certainty. The dark side has always been most efficient when it arrives wrapped in something that feels like conviction. Barriss looks at her, really looks, the first time in the whole night that the assessment behind her eyes has shifted from tactical to something more fundamental. How long did it take you to learn that? Long enough, Ahsoka says. Too long. Then she waits. The sector hums around them with its freight lift distances and its cycling vents, and its complete structural indifference to the fact that something is being decided here. Barriss looks at the grating between her feet. She does not answer. Ahsoka waits. She has learned, across 45 years, and 2 timelines, that some answers need the full weight of silence before they can arrive. She gives it the silence. She does not fill it. She waits. She brings 3 things to the council antechamber. Barriss Offee, walking under her own power, her robe clean, her face carrying the specific composure of someone who has made a decision and is now living inside it. Ventress's twin red lightsabers, sealed in an evidence case requisitioned from the Temple's intake desk an hour prior. She had explained to the clerk with complete accuracy that she was returning confiscated evidence recovered during a field operation, and the clerk had processed the form without looking up. And the physical container of nanodroids sealed its chain of custody logged from Leia Organa's apartment through Ahsoka's secured possession through this morning. The testimony is a different matter, and Ahsoka had structured it carefully. Before entering the temple, she had contacted the Republic's Civilian Judicial Oversight Bureau through a public intake channel, one she had spent 2 months learning in a previous life while sitting in a detention cell, looking for the cracks in the system that had put her there. The recorded testimony from Leia Organa was filed under Standard Witness Protection Protocol, case numbered, time-stamped, entered into the Republic's public judicial record, before anyone in this temple knew what was coming. The physical evidence she carries herself. The testimony exists in a system outside the Council's walls. That is the architecture. The Council cannot route this through their internal disciplinary channels and produce a version of events that the institution finds manageable. The record exists before they were consulted. Tarkin, who is already en route, summoned for a bombing investigation that no longer has a bombing, cannot retroactively shape a narrative around evidence that was entered into the Republic's public record before he stepped off his shuttle. He was prepared to arrive and find a rogue Padawan. He arrives to find that the Padawan has already done the prosecution. The antechamber fills in sequence. Council members take their positions with the specific economy of people accustomed to ceremony who are currently too unsettled to perform it comfortably. Mace Windu stands rather than sits. Obi-Wan Kenobi positions himself to Anakin's left along the chamber wall, close enough that the proximity reads as professional rather than personal, which is the thing Obi-Wan always manages when things are genuinely difficult. Anakin does not position himself anywhere in particular. He stands against the far wall and says nothing and watches his Padawan with an expression that the room cannot read, and that Obi-Wan, who knows him, reads as the specific quality of Anakin's silence when his model of a situation has been irrevocably revised, and he has not yet built a replacement. Tarkin enters. He takes in the room in 4 seconds, the systematic visual sweep of a man whose primary instrument is assessment. He catalogues Barriss, the evidence case, Ahsoka, the composition of the Council's body language, and performs the rapid arithmetic of what he was expecting versus what he has found. His prepared narrative, Jedi incompetence, rogue Padawan, the case for Republic military oversight of an order that cannot police itself, is a document he has been writing in his mind for 3 days. He does not discard it. He files it temporarily. He waits. He looks at Ahsoka. Padawan Tano, he says. The measured precision that makes Tarkin formidable is fully deployed. No surprise in his voice, just the careful leveling of a man who does not permit surprise to show, because showing it would be a concession. I was not aware you were conducting an independent investigation. Ashoka meets his gaze. You're correct, she says. I wasn't investigating, I was preventing. She presents the case. Not with the cadence of a Padawan making a report to her superiors, with the structure of someone who has organized evidence for a public record and is now walking the room through it in the order that produces the clearest picture. Sequential, precise, each element arriving before the previous one has been fully processed, so that the cumulative weight builds rather than landing all at once and being absorbed too easily. The nanodroid origin first. Republic medical supply chain. A dispensary order discrepancy in the Temple's own medical wing several months prior. She produces the document number, produces a copy, places it on the table in front of Mace Windu. The Council has never seen it. The document has been in their own administrative system the entire time. Leia Organa's recorded testimony second. She provides the filed case number and Judicial Bureau reference, time-stamped well before this meeting convened, already entered into the Republic's public record. She plays the relevant section, Barriss Offee's name, the method, the gradual administration over weeks, the ideology behind it, the specific lie told to Leia about what would happen to Jakar. The room is quiet in the way rooms are quiet when everyone in them is doing the same arithmetic simultaneously and arriving at the same total. Mace Windu's hands, folded in his lap, do not move. The physical evidence third, the nanodroid container, sealed, chain of custody documented from Leia Organa's apartment through Ahsoka's secured possession to this table. Physical and present, not routed through any intermediary. Here. Ventress's sabers fourth. She opens the evidence case. The curved hilts lie in their foam housing, inert red crystals, dark. She cross-references the evidence vault manifest, signed out under Barriss's access code in the window after the expected bombing, when it did not occur. The intended use was not framing alone. When the plan failed, the sabers became a different instrument, for eliminating the person who knew why it had failed. She steps back, she looks at Barriss. The room looks at Barriss. Barriss stands in the center of the antechamber with her hands at her sides, and the composure of someone who decided, on an industrial platform in the deep city, in the early hours of this morning, that there was one remaining choice available to her, that she could make without becoming something worse than she already was. She made it then, she is enacting it now. She does not perform contrition. She does not reach for the philosophical framing. She says, everything she has described is accurate. I did this. A pause. The room does not move. And I would tell you why, Barriss continues, but I suspect Padawan Tano will explain my reasons better than I can. The Council looks at Ahsoka. Tarkin looks at Ahsoka. Tarkin's prepared narrative, the document he filed in his mind several days ago, makes a sound inaudible to everyone in the room of a structure meeting a load it was not engineered for. He does not let it show. He is very good at not letting things show. But the arithmetic is complete, and the total is not what he came here to collect, a Padawan who prevented a bombing. Filed with the Republic Judiciary before the Council could manage the situation internally, and is currently standing in front of him with evidence that is clean, documented, and entirely outside his ability to retroactively shape. He has been outmaneuvered, not humiliated, cornered. Every exit was closed before he arrived, by someone who knew which exits he would use. He says nothing. He waits. He is still Tarkin, and Tarkin waits when waiting is the only move remaining. The high spire chamber holds light differently from the antechamber below. The windows here are not narrow. They are full panels, floor to ceiling, angled to catch Coruscant's filtered morning light and distributed across the circular room in a way that leaves no corner unilluminated. 12 seats in their ring. The ancient stone of the floor, worn smooth by 10,000 years of boots and robes, and the particular weight of decisions that could not be unmade. The room was designed to feel like clarity, to feel like a place where the Force itself might have an opinion. Ashoka has stood in this room many times, in this life and others. She knows the way the light moves across it in the morning hours, and she knows the specific quality of the silence it produces, and she knows, from 30 additional years of retrospective analysis, exactly what this room failed to be when it was needed most. She stands in it now and waits for Barriss to speak. The Council requested a full account. Barriss gives it. She speaks without the academic register she has used as armor throughout the sequence of days. Stripped of it on a platform in the industrial deep, she has not rebuilt it, and the confession that emerges now has the quality of something being said for the first time in its true form. not performed, not shaped for maximum impact or minimum consequence. The flat account of someone who made choices and is now describing them without the editorial distance of ideology softening the edges. The nanodroid acquisition. Leia Termund. The specific lie she told Leia about what the compound would do to Jakar Bowman, and why she told it, and what she understood Leia would have said if she had been told the truth. The bombing's intended political function, not chaos for its own sake, but a specific signal, delivered through specific bodies intended to make visible a corruption she believed would otherwise remain invisible until it consumed everything. And then, I was not wrong about the rot. The room holds. The Order has traded its connection to the living force for military structure and political access. This is not a controversial observation. It is an observable fact that anyone willing to look clearly can see. I looked clearly. Her voice does not waver. I was wrong about the remedy. I chose to fight a corrupt institution with the same weapons it uses, and in doing so, I became a mirror of what I was fighting against. I made Leia Termund into an acceptable loss. I made Ahsoka Tano into a tool. I made myself into exactly the thing I believed I was opposing. She stops. The last sentence stays in the room. I'm not asking for a particular outcome, she says. I'm telling you what I did and why, because the why is the part that matters, and someone in this room should hear it, without the filtration of a prosecution narrative. She looks at the council. She does not look away. The why did not justify the what. I understand that now, but the why is still true, and it will keep being true after I have been sentenced, and if this council does not reckon with the why, then my sentence will be the only thing that comes of this, and the rot I identified will continue, and the next person with my clarity will make the same wrong choice for the same right reasons, and the cycle will run again. Mace Windu speaks first. He speaks with the careful, measured authority of a man who has been building the Republic's confidence in the Jedi Order for decades, and understands at the level of institutional reflex that what Barriss has described requires a response that does not concede more than necessary. His voice carries genuine weight. He is not a fool, and he is not an unfeeling man, and the specific gravity of what he has just heard is visible in the set of his jaw and the deliberate pace of his words. He speaks about wartime necessity, the burden of leadership under impossible conditions, the distinction between institutional failure and individual corruption. He uses the language carefully. It is always used carefully, this language, which is part of the problem, and he does not see it, and Ahsoka watches him not see it with the specific patience of someone who has had 30 additional years to understand why. Ki-Adi-Mundi adds something about the chain of command, about the importance of working within established structures, rather than appointing oneself the arbiter of institutional legitimacy. Obi-Wan says nothing. His hands are folded in his lap, and his eyes are on the middle distance, and he has the expression of a man listening to two conversations simultaneously. The one happening in the room, and the one happening in his own mind, where something has been refusing to be quiet for some time now. Yoda, at the back of the chamber, says nothing. His eyes are on Ahsoka. They have been on Ahsoka since she entered. She does not ask permission. She speaks. I agree with her diagnosis, she says. I want to be direct about that before anything else. I am not going to stand here and tell you that Barriss Offee was wrong about what she saw. She was not wrong about what she saw. The room shifts. Not movement, attention. She was wrong about what she did with it. Those are different failures, and conflating them is how institutions protect themselves from accountability by pointing to the person who responded badly to a legitimate problem. She keeps her voice at a register that does not rise, does not perform, does not invite the room to dismiss her as emotional, level, precise. The register she has been practicing for 30 years without knowing she was practicing it. I will not help you do that. She looks at Mace Windu. In another life, one that is not distant from this one, this council expelled a Padawan because she was a convenient suspect, because investigating a knight was harder to manage than prosecuting a Padawan, because the Padawan's guilt was narratively clean, and the knight's guilt was narratively complicated, and this institution has a consistent preference for the clean narrative. She watches his face. I know this with a specificity I cannot fully explain to you right now. You should be unsettled by the specificity. I am telling you it is accurate. The council does not have an answer for this. The specificity has landed the way she intended it to land, not as accusation they can deflect, but as knowledge they cannot account for. And the inability to account for it is its own kind of evidence. She continues. You believe the Force placed you here to guide the Republic through this crisis. The Force did not place you here. You chose to answer a Chancellor's call to war, and the choice was yours. And it has consequences that you have been describing as necessity, because necessity does not require reflection and consequence does. A pause. Short. One gear. There is a difference between being chosen and choosing. Until this council understands that difference clearly, you will continue making decisions that require people who trust you to pay costs you refuse to calculate. Obi-Wan's face, held by the narration for exactly long enough, the expression of a man hearing something he has been carefully not thinking for. 3 years, articulated by a 16-year-old who is not speaking like a 16-year-old, in a voice that carries the specific weight of someone who has already lived the consequences of the thing they are describing. It is not anger on his face. It is something that recognition produces when it arrives unexpectedly. The specific expression of a door that was locked, opening without a key. Anakin's face, beside him, undone is not quite the right word for it, but it is the closest word available. He is watching someone who has absorbed everything he is going to do. Every fall, every failure, every choice that will narrow into the choice that ends the world as he knows it, and came back not to prevent it through confrontation, but to demonstrate in front of a room full of witnesses that there is a way to see clearly and still choose grace. He does not know this in language. His body knows it, his body has known it since the courtyard. Since your different landed in the space between them, and she did not deny it. He does not move, he does not speak, he watches. The chamber is quiet. Mace Windu has no prepared answer. Ki-Adi-Mundi has no prepared answer. The architecture of institutional response, the language of necessity, the procedures of wartime exception, does not fit the shape of what has just been said, and forcing it to fit would require saying it aloud, and saying it aloud would prove the argument. Into the silence, without raising her voice, without stepping forward, without making the delivery a performance. I'm not asking you to be perfect, Ahsoka says. I'm asking you to be honest about what you aren't. The light moves across the ancient floor. The 12 seats hold their ring. Nobody speaks. The private session lasts 40 minutes. Ahsoka waits in the antechamber below, and does not use the time to rehearse anything. There is nothing left to rehearse. The evidence is filed. The testimony is entered. The argument has been made in the only room where it needed to be made, to the only people who needed to hear it. What happens in the chamber above is the council's work now. She has done hers. She sits on the stone bench along the antechamber wall, and listens to the temple around her. The sounds of its ordinary operation, footsteps in the colonnade, the distant rhythm of a training session in the east courtyard, the particular resonance of the spire's upper levels when Coruscant's morning wind moves through the architecture at this hour. She grew up inside these sounds. She knows every frequency of this building the way you know the sounds of a home you have not lived in for a very long time, and cannot return to, and still carry in the body like a second skeleton. She does not let herself feel it, not yet. Mace Windu delivers the offer. He does it standing, which costs him something. She can see that it costs him in the specific set of his shoulders, and the deliberate pace of his words, the particular quality of a man doing something that his instincts oppose because his judgment has overruled them. The offer is genuine, knighthood, immediate, without further ceremony, in acknowledgement of what she has demonstrated across the last day and night. The council is not gracious about it. Gracious is beyond them today, and she does not require it. She lets him finish. Then she says, no. Not with a breaking voice, not with the grief of the original timeline, which was a wound delivered by people she trusted, who stopped trusting her. That refusal was a loss wearing the shape of a choice. This one is different in every structural way. This is a choice made from surplus, from clarity, from 30 additional years of understanding exactly what the knighthood would mean and exactly what it would cost her to hold it. Mace Windu's expression does not change, but something behind it does. The knighthood would mean I've earned a place inside the structure, she says. I'm not sure the structure is what the Force needs from me right now. I think what it needs is someone on the outside who still loves it, and who can do things that someone on the inside can't. That sounds like heresy, Mace Windu says. It sounds like what Barriss should have chosen, she says. Someone willing to be the critic without becoming the enemy. The third path. The one that requires the most patience and produces the least visible evidence of itself, and is the only one that doesn't replicate the damage it's trying to undo. The chamber holds the silence for a moment. I'm not leaving because I'm angry, she continues. I'm not leaving because you failed me. In this room, today, you didn't. I'm leaving because the work I need to do cannot be done from inside these walls, and I have known that for long enough that the knowing has become a kind of decision all on its own. They let her go, not unanimously, and not without the specific institutional discomfort of an organization releasing someone whose existence outside its walls is a standing criticism of its walls. But the political reality of the morning, the public judicial record, the dismantling of Tarkin's prosecutorial framework, the speech in the high spire that none of them have an answer for, has made challenging her departure an act that would simply demonstrate the argument she made. They know it. She knows they know it. Yoda stops her at the doorway. He does not rise from his seat. He simply speaks, quietly, in the syntax of someone who has seen more versions of this moment than the room can hold. Walk your path you will. With us or without us, the Force goes the same. She looks at him, the oldest living member of an order she is walking away from, who has known her since she was a child, brought to this temple with nothing but Force sensitivity and no family to return to. Who trained the man who trained her? Who will outlive almost everyone in this building and carry the weight of what is coming in exile on a swamp planet? Alone. For 2 decades. She does not bow. She nods. The nod of an equal, of someone who respects the title without being bound by it, who honors the person without requiring the institution. Then she walks. Anakin is in the corridor. She knew he would be. She has known since the courtyard, since your different landed between them without an answer, that this conversation was coming, and she has been carrying it carefully, the weight of everything she cannot say, calibrated against the weight of the one thing she can. They walked together without deciding to, the long colonnade toward the temple's main gate, the way they always walked, side by side, one of them always slightly ahead, and neither of them ever quite agreeing on which one. The colonnade light falls in intervals between the pillars, and the sound of their footsteps overlaps in the particular rhythm of 2 people who have walked together long enough that their pace has learned each other. He is quiet for longer than she expects. Then, what did you see? Not what did you know, not what happened, not how. What did you see? He has always understood, even without the vocabulary for it, that Ahsoka's relationship to the Force is not the same as his, that she receives it differently, more directly, less filtered through the analytical mind he cannot turn off. He is asking in the only register that has ever reached her accurately. She considers the question. She gives it the weight it deserves. I saw you, she says, and I saw what you could be if someone who loved you didn't let you burn. He stops walking. She goes a half step further, then turns. He is looking at her with an expression that the narration can only render in physical terms, because the emotional content of it has not yet developed the language it would need, the feeling of a very old key finding a lock it did not know it had. Not understanding, he does not understand. Not fully, maybe not ever, not in the way that would require her to say everything she cannot say, but recognition, the specific recognition of someone whose body knows something true before the mind has caught up with it. His jaw is set, his eyes are clear. He is not going to cry because Anakin Skywalker does not cry in corridors, and even now, even here, some things hold, but the thing behind his eyes is the closest he has come to it in years. He does not reach for a joke, he does not deflect, he does not use any of the distances he keeps between himself and whatever he is actually feeling. He stands in the colonnade of the temple he will one day walk through with different eyes and different hands and a different name. And he does something he does not understand the need for. He reaches out and grips her shoulder, both hands. Steady, the grip of someone holding on to something they are about to lose and know it. Not a ceremonial gesture, not a performance. The weight of his hands, present and specific, the way Anakin Skywalker has always expressed what he cannot say. Through contact, through the insistence of physical presence, through being here, right here, don't go. He holds on for 3 seconds. She puts her hand over his, brief, real. Then she steps back, and his hands fall. You're going to lose your way, she says. Try to find it again. She drops her hand, she turns. She walks toward the light of the temple gate. The steps, Coruscant morning, genuine and full. Not the amber of the maintenance hours, not the gray-filtered diffusion of the early cycle. The real thing, white and clean and too bright for anything to hide in. The light that arrives when the upper atmosphere clears and the city below catches it and throws it back doubled. She stands at the top of the temple steps and looks at the city. She is not going home. There is no version of the temple that is home anymore, and she made her peace with that in a different life, and does not need to make it again. She is going to the city, to the networks that exist, and the ones she will build, to the people who will be needed and do not know yet that they will be needed, to the long, patient, invisible work of someone who has decided that the third path, the slow one, the one without visible evidence, the one Barris could not choose, is the only one worth walking. She has years before the end comes. She will not waste them. She thinks of Letta Termond in the sub-level, sitting in orange light on a crate, waiting for someone to tell her it's over. She thinks of Jacker Bowman eating breakfast in a hangar somewhere below, alive and entirely unaware. She thinks of Rex and his brothers, carrying chips in their skulls that are slowly counting down to a command they cannot disobey. She thinks of a boy in a village on Tatooine who will grow up not knowing his father, because she could not change everything, only this, only now, only what she could reach. She thinks of Anakin, standing in the colonnade with his hands finally at his sides. She will not save him, she knows that. The Force does not guarantee outcomes, it only offers moments, and she has used this one with everything she had. What he does with the weight of her hands on his shoulder, the look in his eyes in the corridor, the knowledge that somewhere someone who loves him is walking away rather than letting him fall, that belongs to him, that is his to carry or discard. She can only give it. She cannot choose what he does with it. That understanding, the specific hard-won piece of someone who has done everything they could and is still not certain it was enough, is the thing that took her the longest to learn. In her first life, she spent years believing that love required certainty of outcome, that caring about someone meant guaranteeing them. She was wrong, and the wrongness of it cost her more than she can calculate. You do not love people by ensuring their futures. You love them by refusing to abandon the present they are standing in, even when the present is insufficient, even when you know how the chapter ends. She loved Anakin. She had always loved Anakin, not with the uncomplicated admiration of the student she used to be, something deeper than that, the kind of love that can only be forged by loss, which is the knowledge of exactly what the other person is worth, and the willingness to still show up, even knowing the cost. She showed up. She came back across 30 years of consequence and stood in a courtyard and said, "You're different," when she meant, "I know what you carry, and I came back anyway." That is all she had. She gave it. The city opened ahead of her, vast and indifferent, and full of work she had not yet begun. The white light of Coruscant morning caught her montrals and made no shadow at her feet. She walked into it without slowing. Behind her, the temple held its silence. Ahead of her, the galaxy was not yet saved. That was fine. She had already lost. She had already survived it, she began. Let us know what you'd like to see next. The end.